morning, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and I want to thank you all once again for joining me on this journey, and some of my musings and opinions and thoughts and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's actually very refreshing to read through your comments. I don't always reply to all of them, but I do look at the comments as I go through, and yes, it's gratifying to see so many just wonderful people out there. But anyways, and talking of wonderful people, one of the things I wanted to mention was the number of people that showed up for the farmers rally on the 22nd of November, and this was across country. There was a slow roll in Ottawa of farm tractors, but just about every major town anyways had some kind of protest going on about the CFIA's culling of these 360 healthy ostriches. And this sort of leads me into the whole notion right now of how much gaslighting is actually going on with the general public. And then I find out the other day that the government is employing a thing called a nudge unit, which is to try and nudge people's behaviors and thoughts in a particular direction. And this was put to, I guess, incredible use during the COVID situation to try and stop people who were, hesitant about taking the inoculation. And so they employed all kinds of psychological techniques. And again, we see this is what's going on at the ostrich farm, or was going on with the CFIA. They were completely denying that there was any such thing as herd immunity, that there was no need to retest these birds, and yet when you go on their website, their protocols are entirely different. Testing all along the way, follow the science, quarantine procedures, which weren't followed at all. Okay, and they just refuse to do any of this stuff. Live up to their own website says 14 days, and this is also from the World Organization for Animal Health. 14 days is all you need to get rid of any contamination. And yet, all through this process, they were talking about how deadly a pathogen this was, and yet, after the slaughter by a maybe not so skilled marksman, because there were still ostriches alive, can you imagine? Can you imagine what that scene was under spotlights? It would be like a Roman amphitheater. Where the gladiator comes out and starts, killing the slaves and this kind of stuff. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe this YouTube video will get taken down. But you know what I mean. I mean, this was absolutely barbaric. And to have those birds witness this, watching, these are not like chickens, where you have like a 2 or 3 year lifespan, and usually they're moving on, like that's their good laying period, and unless they're pets, they really don't go to. And I've never heard of like a 60 or 70-year-old chicken. So these birds form relationships. This is not a normal situation, and I'm so glad that the animal welfare people are going after the CFIA for animal cruelty. But the gaslighting involved in that, to try and convince you that immunity doesn't exist, this is absolutely a farce, even though there is a professor in, I can't pronounce his name, in Tokyo, at the University of Tokyo, who is investigating the antibodies that these birds create, because they are such long-lived birds. They have an incredible immune system. Okay, now, but we're getting gaslit in every area that you can think of, whether it is the climate, whether it is the whole green mandate, the whole EV thing, and of course they're all falling apart. Every single one of these things, these narratives, is falling apart because they're ideologically driven, not driven by common sense. But the important thing about gaslighting, and I actually did a video, maybe I'll link it below in the description, but I did a video about gaslighting, and when you ask people, what they think gaslighting is, they go, it's being, lied to or hoodwinked or what have you. And yes, that's true, but that's only part of the story. Okay, and in my video I go through the movie called Gaslight, And the idea is that you lie in such a way that the other person starts to doubt their own sanity. Okay, and so things which are clearly obvious, and maybe this is a little cruel of me, but I certainly do throw this in front of some people's faces when I remind them during this whole process. You remember when you walked into a restaurant and you had to wear a mask when you were walking in, but when you sat down you could take it off, so you could eat your food. But if you wanted to go to the washroom, you had to, as soon as you stood up, you had to pop that mask back on your face again. And I say to people, like how stupid do you have to be not to get that? I mean, it's so in your face obvious. And this is gaslighting, because everyone knew that it was obvious that this was just absolute nonsense. But they doubted their own ability to judge the situation, to assess the risk, the potential risk that they were under, which was basically a 99.2% chance of a complete recovery without any side effects whatsoever. And that to me is no risk whatsoever. So even if there was virtually no risk to taking an inoculation, I wouldn't be doing it, because the risk level is not high enough. But like I say, people start to doubt their own judgment, and when you start to doubt your own judgment, you can't assess any situation. You can't assess your life situation. You can't assess what's the best potential move forward with your life in a given situation, because once you start to doubt, once you start to second guess yourself, especially over ridiculous things, and this is the whole psychology of mass formation, and this guy, Matthias Desmet, the psychology of totalitarianism, he really fleshes this idea out. It's a brilliant book. He's a brilliant man, and it's a very, very easy read. But he says that you get to the point where the more ridiculous the rule, the easier it is to convince people that that is the rule they should be following. And so all of these things that are taking place right now, all of these gaslighting events telling you that things are going to work, when you can clearly see a little bit of investigation will show you that it is not going to work. Like the EV, like the whole green movement. Where's all the raw materials going to come from to achieve all of that? So all of these narratives are actually now starting to fall apart, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think they thought that they would have a bit more longevity, because even Bill Gates has come out and said, that climate change is not the danger that we thought it was. But again, the way they have nuanced that conversation, you were either a believer or you were a denier. There is no middle period, but yet we all realize that there was ice ages, there was a little ice age. The climate on this planet has changed, and it's changed drastically, and we have a visible history of those changes. As I say, when I was driving down, the sedimentary limestone in northwestern Texas, that only comes from one place. That's an ocean. So this was an ocean at one time, and so there's been many, many, many changes. So when you put it into that kind of a framework, that yes, we know there's climate change, but if you don't agree with the mechanisms, maybe it's the sun, maybe it's the Gulf Stream, who knows? Maybe it's cosmic particles coming from outer space forming a cloud cover on the planet. There's so many things involved in this, but they've got this argument down to you either believe one, and if you don't believe one, the narrative, the ideology, you are this. You are, a right-wing extremist and conspiracy theories and all this blah, 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 blah. And again, this prevents any kind of conversation from taking place. So we're being forced apart by this ideology. We're being forced into a situation, and this is not just climate change. All of this, whether it is critical race theory, all of this kind of stuff, immigration, is all now being framed in a way that if you don't like A, you are B. Or you want to control immigration, and you think only legal. Oh, you're a racist. Well, please, how do you get past that hurdle and have that conversation? And these are important conversations. These are huge issues going on in our society. And if we can't have that conversation, and we're being gaslit, and you can no longer assess the situation and make a reasonable decision, a reasonable diagnosis, we could be in real big trouble here. And again, if you followed the advice or the belief or the logics of the scientists around influenza, but we should all be dead now. I mean, influenza has been around since before we were around. Okay, and so, but we're here, but we actually have an overpopulation problem, which is questionable. Of course, I think that's another topic for another video. But yes, why are we at 8 billion people if these viruses are so deadly? And I'm not saying that they don't kill people, and I'm not saying that that isn't a tragedy in the individual circumstances, but in the bigger picture, we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be able to survive this stuff. Okay, you ever watch any of those period pieces in history and the filth that they live in? And yet these guys are getting up on horses with frickin' swords and shields and battling it out for hours on end. I mean, they were as tough as all get out. So anyway, the whole thing about gaslighting, like I say, it's just a never-ending scenario of absolute garbage that's being pumped into the public's head. And the more we accept this, the more psychological damage will be done. And as I say, the government employing psychological tools to push the public's decisions one direction or another is actually, that's a pretty concerning aspect that's taking place in our society today, because these people are not elected. This is CSIS, this is the RCMP, this is the OPP, same thing. The OPP did stuff on Facebook during the COVID pandemic, and they responded to posts, and they tracked people, and they followed events that were going to be held, protests and so on and so forth. And yes, they kept tabs on all of that. They were using stingrays to pick up people's phone conversations in certain vicinities. I mean, we really are virtually in a police state already, and that is a very distressing thing, because I'm looking at, well, Max Kaiser calls it neo-feudalism, and that's what it'll be. There'll be a group of elites and the rest of us, duking it out, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and with a whole bunch of people who are now unable to assess a situation and plan a path out of where they're going. So yes, this is very concerning, that we should all wake up to what's going on. Don't decry these protests, join these protests. They're perfectly legal, they're lawful. We have a right to stand up and speak out against things which are so glaringly wrong and in your face. That's why we supposedly have free and fair elections, every 4 years. But because we have a right to decide the way in which we're governed, and we're getting that flipped on its head. And I think this is why the government is following this process, is that you won't be able to make a decision. You just hand over that responsibility to somebody else. So I hope you can all take that on board, and I'm sure that most of my viewers here, are probably pretty up on what I've been talking about. But so if you can, just take this as a little reminder that we are in very, very difficult times, and in the middle of a psyop, which is a soft war, because it's not always visible, and the wounds, they'll talk about, people who've been in abusive relationships and the mental scarring, abused children, and so on and so forth. That the mental scarring is a real aspect of being damaged. It's not just being hit over the head with a hammer type of deal. So yes, we need to be aware of this, and that's the spell breaker. is being aware that that's what's taking place. And yeah, if you want a thrill, actually, I think I will try and link that too below. Watch the movie Gaslight. I will link also my video about gaslighting below. But beware, these psychological tools are not passive at all. They may seem that way, they may seem like they're not moving, or that they're not dangerous, but you know, they're like a coiled snake in your head, waiting to strike. Okay, well, that's about it. I've been going on a bit too long, bit of a rant, but anyway, I hope you got something out of this, and like I say, it's a pleasure to have you all along. Although I can't see you in my mind's eye, yes, I see a whole bunch of people watching this video, and I think that's just fantastic. And thank you all so much. Thank you for people who sent money to the Give Send Go, and through the PayPal, which is no longer working for some reason. I couldn't figure that one out, but anyway, the Give Send Go is up and running. The link for that is down below as well, and I thank all of you that have participated in that. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And this is the Houndog signing off, wishing you a very pleasant morning, and we'll talk very shortly. See you now. Bye.